Ending excessive incarceration. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the conversation. I'm David Schuster. There is a growing bipartisan effort to try to come up with some common sense solutions to try to remove nonviolent offenders from essentially being stuck in the US criminal justice system. The effort is being led by a group called Reform Alliance. Its CEO, OO, and Chief Advocacy Officer joins us today, Jessica Jackson. She's also a former mayor of Mill Valley, California. Jessica, this is personal to you. Explain why.
Yes, thanks for having me on. So this is personal to me because like so many Americans out there, I had a loved one who was incarcerated. The more I've gotten to see the problems in our justice system, the more I've just met so many families that, like mine, were torn apart by a criminal legal system that fails to make us safer and instead just tears families apart.
What were some of the things you saw in your particular case?
So here at Reform Alliance, we're really focused on supervision, so probation and parole reforms. We see so many cases that are just heartbreaking and serve no interest in public safety. Like one man we saw down in Pennsylvania who unfortunately was hit by a drunk driver while he was on probation. He was in the hospital, he was on a coma. He was in a coma, he was unable to report to his probation officer, so he missed their weekly meetings. As a result, his probation was violated and he had to face the very real possibility of going back to prison because he had been unable to make those meetings. We've seen, people who have been incarcerated for missing meetings with probation officers, who've been incarcerated for simply being in the presence of somebody else, a loved one who had a felony as well. People who have left the county to visit a dying grandmother and come home and found out that they were now on their way to having their probation revoked, unfortunately, because they had left the county's jurisdiction. So just so many heartbreaking examples of a system that fails to value any human dignity and also fails to make us safer.
And it seems like the parole and probation system itself is complicated. I mean, even for those of us who are not part of it, but trying to understand what are the rules and what are not the rules and when are there exceptions, it seems very complex. And you would think that, well, there should be an answer for all this. It should be sort of streamlined. It should be more simple. What's the political will out there, both at the state level, maybe the federal level, to try to change this?
Well, I think there's great news on that front. So probation was started as a way to help people stabilize who are, they've just been convicted of a crime. Either they've served some time in prison or jail, or they've been allowed to remain in the community. But it was meant to focus to help stabilize people. What it's evolved into is really a trapdoor to failure, where people are being incarcerated for these technical violations I spoke of, or being incarcerated, for failing to comply with a simple condition of with a not so simple condition of their probation or parole. What's great about this issue is it's one that has really transcended all the political disruption that's out there. We've been able to pass 16 bills in 10 different states over the course of the last 3 years, introducing probation and parole reforms in red, blue, purple states. We've been able to build some incredible coalitions with both conservative and liberal partners, and have been able to work with business leaders, faith leaders, local elected officials, folks who realize that these are evidence-based solutions that are going to make their community safer.
What has been the single most effective argument? I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, look, it's just a waste of taxpayer money to take people who are nonviolent offenders because they break parole or probation to send them back to prison where the taxpayers have to essentially warehouse them again. Is that the leading argument? Are there other arguments that seem to cut through?
Yeah, I think it depends who you're speaking to, right? Sometimes it's the audience that one particular message might pertain to, but across the board, people are worried about taxpayer resources. They're worried about their community safety. They don't want to see a whole bunch of money being sunk into something that is not effective in keeping them safe. They'd rather see it go to address the underlying reason why people are committing crimes, whether that's substance abuse or poverty or mental health reasons. And I think the human dignity angle, there are just so many stories out there, and reform has been working to highlight them, working to elevate the voices of people who've been impacted, as well as their families and their children, and really get those stories out there so that people connect with us on a human level.
You mentioned the children and the sort of the human connection in all of this. What sort of impact does it have on children when a parent or a loved one is locked away for a period of time?
I mean, it's a huge impact. Imagine not having your mom or your dad there to kiss you goodnight after as you're going to bed, or not having them there to pick you up from school. Unfortunately, about 7% of the children in America are going through that. They have had a family member, a parent who's been incarcerated. You've got millions, 35 million kids who have a parent who has a criminal record. This can lead to extreme collateral consequences. People who have a hard time finding a job because of that conviction many years ago. People who have a hard time finding housing because of that conviction many years ago. People who can't attend a school field trip with their child because of a conviction years and years ago. So it has a huge detrimental impact on kids. In fact, kids are much more likely to enter the system themselves when they grow up. So we start seeing generational incarceration, and all that could be avoided because unfortunately, like I said, it comes with a very high cost, not just in human dignity and taxpayer resources, but to public safety, because just locking people up and throwing away the key for a set period of time and then releasing them with no job, no housing, no support doesn't actually make us any safer.
You've been on the front lines of some of these legislative efforts, most notably perhaps the 2018 First Step Act, which was perhaps one of the biggest criminal justice reform bills passed in a long time. What is the key, whether it's at the state or the federal level, in terms of getting the legislation through, connecting with lawmakers and getting them to say, hey, this is something we need to do?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the formerly incarcerated or formerly supervised community is essential. Being able to elevate their voices, get those stories out there. They're just so heartbreaking, and they really open up legislators' hearts to what's going on. I think second, our bipartisan coalitions is just key. You see, we've worked on reforms across multiple administrations, both state and federal level, even local reforms. And the key to doing so is to pull together a big group of bipartisan members and unlikely stakeholders like the business community, and have everybody pushing for the reforms. So we've had huge success in a time when politics are very, very difficult, as we're seeing, even as recent as with the House Speaker fight. But we've been able to get some real reforms done and change some real lives.
And I understand it's not just, of course, about legislation and whatnot. The Reform Alliance has had some events for kids. I noticed just one in Philadelphia with sponsorships from professional sports teams.
Yeah, that's absolutely one of my favorite parts of the year is getting to meet with the kids. I was part of the Brooklyn Nets event that happened with our board member Clara Wusai and board member Meek Mill, as well as Lala Anthony, who came out. It was a bunch of about 21 moms and their kids. All the moms had been justice impacted, had been incarcerated. And it just was so great to watch these kids. They came running through the gift store and they were picking out jerseys and putting their own names on the jerseys. They were watching the players practice. They, got to go down and sit by the court, and then they got to watch the game and have a dinner and meet Meek and meet Michael Rubin and meet Clara Wusai. So it's really one of the most special parts of what we do.
And these are families that I would imagine have been through the ringer, who have been through a lot of heartache, and so to have something so positive and essentially maybe takes away part of the stigma that maybe they had been feeling.
Absolutely, and I think it gives them a reason to be hopeful, especially around the holidays. It puts a smile on their face.
For people who want to help out on their own, just concerned community members, citizens who feel like, yeah, we need to do something about excessive incarceration. We need to figure out how to change and simplify probation and make exceptions for people who have to be in the hospital or visit a sick relative. What can they do?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you need to follow Reform Alliance on social media. You need to go to reformalliance.com and sign up to be a reformer so you can keep in touch with our efforts and help us change these laws. Second, if you work at a company, talk to them about hiring practices. Hiring people who are formerly incarcerated is something that all of us can help affect, and it really, truly changes lives. We just recently had a job fair for a bunch of folks who are on parole here in New York. It was absolutely incredible. And I'll tell you afterwards, when I talk to some of the employers who hired them, they say they're the best employees that they have. So that's another area that people can have a huge impact.
And in terms of legislation and legislative fights, is there one particular that's coming up, one particular state battle or federal battle that you're looking at right now?
Yes, and if people sign up to become a Reform Alliance reformer, they'll be able to help us sign petitions, write to your legislators. We've got several new bills this year out in the states, including ones in Iowa and Pennsylvania and Indiana. We're also going to be working on a federal bill, and we're just super excited to be continuing our efforts and broadening the number of lives that we're able to touch.
Yeah, and there are both conservative and progressive arguments to get behind this and not only reform the criminal justice system, but make it perhaps a little easier so that there are some common sense reforms for people who accidentally violate parole or probation. Jessica Jackson, she's with the Reform Alliance. Jessica, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
You got it. Welcome back to the conversation. I'm David Schuster. The US Supreme Court has now set a hearing date for President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness case. Here to talk about that and what it all means is Ayelet Sheffi. She's a senior economic policy reporter for Insider. Ayelet, February 28th, that's when they're gonna have the arguments. Explain what the legal issues are in front of the court.
Yeah, absolutely. So on February 28th, we have two lawsuits that will be coming to the Supreme Court. And these are the two lawsuits that late last year succeeded in blocking Biden's federal student loan forgiveness. So one of the lawsuits was filed by 6 Republican-led states who sued Biden's federal student debt relief because they argued that it would hurt their state's tax revenues and that of student loan company Mohila, which is based in Missouri, excuse me, where the lawsuit was based. And then we have another lawsuit that was brought on by two student loan borrowers, one who sued because they did not qualify for the full $20,000 amount of student debt relief. And this is the overarching theme that the Supreme Court will take on when they hear these cases in early February, and will ultimately decide, if the student debt relief can go through.
And to remind everybody, the student loan forgiveness that Joe Biden came up with, it's $20,000 in forgiveness for people who are making less than $125,000 a year. The president could have gone much higher. He could have set the threshold for income lower or higher. And so part of what I understand is that Joe Biden, when he enacted this, he used a 2003 HEROES Act, which had a provision within the education bill, which said that in the case of national emergency, the Department of Education could forgive student loans. And the Biden administration said, aha, the pandemic, that's all the justification we need. Is there another route if the Supreme Court were to say, no, you can't do that, that was arbitrary and capricious as the law says, the education secretary can't do that? Can they use something like the 1965 education bill to justify student loan forgiveness?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of Democratic lawmakers and advocates have been arguing that since the HEROES Act of 2003 is reliant on a national emergency like the pandemic, and it risks getting struck down by the Supreme Court, given that's what a lot of critics have been saying, he can't keep using the pandemic as a reason to cancel the student debt. The Higher Education Act of 1965 would actually give the education secretary the ability to waive or modify student loan balances without, being connected with a national emergency like COVID-19. The administration has not commented on whether it would pursue that route, but it's certainly something that a lot of legal experts, advocates, and Democratic lawmakers like Elizabeth Warren have been arguing that he could have done that from the start and possibly avoided these legal challenges.
What are legal experts saying in terms of where this seems to be headed? I mean, does it seem like there are the votes in the court on both wings of the Supreme Court to support this kind of authority within the executive branch to essentially forgive student loans? Or are there some fears that maybe the votes are not there?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that's on a lot of people's minds right now. What we've seen, obviously the Supreme Court is conservative majority, and they do tend to uphold what the lower court's rulings have been. And given that these lawsuits have been blocked in conservative majority courts, appointed by former President Donald Trump and Bush, I believe as well, people are thinking that if they go with the precedent and they stick with those lower court rulings, they might ultimately decide that the student debt relief is illegal. But obviously, we have yet to hear the arguments, so we'll just have to see how that progresses.
And for students, there's been a lot of confusion for people who are looking at their debt who think, okay, I qualify, and how come I haven't been able to get my debt forgiven? What do they do right now? I assume they're just sort of treading water and hoping, if you're a student, you hope that the Supreme Court upholds the Biden administration, and then at some point, maybe later in the year, maybe the summertime, then they get their student loan forgiven?
Yeah, so at this point, there is a ton of uncertainty as we're going into this new year as to where borrowers' balances will end up standing. The one thing we do know right now is that payments were supposed to resume on January 1st, just a couple of days ago, but Biden did extend that student loan payment pause 60 days after June 30th or whenever the lawsuits are resolved. So the latest borrowers will probably start resuming their payments this year would be in September. But obviously we don't know how these lawsuits will play out, what course they will take. So it is dependent on those. Other things borrowers can be doing right now is monitoring the reforms to targeted student loan forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness, closed school discharges and total and permanent disability discharges. The administration has implemented some reforms that they've started to carry out and they will be carrying out in the coming months. So that's definitely something borrowers can follow as well.
Is there any precedent for the Supreme Court to look at in terms of evaluating this case? Are there other programs where a president has, forgiven loans or a lot of people would say, wait a second, what about, the loans that a lot of people got at the beginning of the pandemic? Those were forgiven. If Republicans in Congress can have their small, business loans forgiven because of the program, why can't students? Is there some equivalency there?
Yeah, so there is no direct equivalency to what President Joe Biden has enacted, which is this mass student debt cancellation. It'll impact millions of borrowers. And the federal government hasn't really done anything quite like this. But the point you made with that Paycheck Protection Program that we saw during the pandemic is something that a lot of Democrats, even the White House, has pointed to. They're saying that, these staunch critics of debt relief like Marjorie Taylor Greene had their, PPP loans forgiven. But obviously those are different programs. Those were, specifically geared toward pandemic relief, whereas this broad student debt relief is much more expansive, affecting millions and millions of people. So, regardless of the connections people are trying to making with these past programs and past federal relief, this isn't something that the administration has ever done, which is why it's being so hotly debated right now.
Now, the Supreme Court, of course, they're going to decide this based on the law, their interpretation of the Constitution, executive authority. But I'm also curious about the economic impact in all of this. And you cover the economy for Insider. What would the economic impact be nationwide, or in particular sectors of the economy, if in fact the student loan program was upheld, and suddenly you have all these students who suddenly don't have to pay back $20,000? What does that mean?
Yeah, so at this point, the exact economic implications are unknown since this isn't something that hasn't been done before. But what the administration has frequently maintained is that canceling a student debt in connection with restarting payments won't really have a significant impact on, on the economy and on inflation. The idea is that those two policy measures will kind of interact with each other and cancel out any potential negative impacts toward inflation or toward GDP. And overall, it's something that they're saying it's worth it. It'll actually be a stimulant for the economy because it will allow borrowers who have been burdened with this debt for so long to actually make purchases, buy a house, buy a car, put that money back into the economy. economy in ways that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise when they were paying off their student loans.
And have we seen a stimulative effect of the pause in student loans that exists to this day?
Yes, yeah, exactly. We have seen a pretty significant impact. Borrowers have been able to put money towards so much more than they would have been able to had they been making payments consistently.
Now, do you have any sense about how the court could rule on this? I mean, I suppose the options could be they just strike it down and say the law needs to be rewritten, or they say no, this is not legal under any circumstances. There's nothing you can do to sort of forgive student loans and make it pass muster with the Supreme Court. Are there a wide variety of options here, or is it pretty much either it's upheld or it's kicked away?
Right. So based on what we've seen right now, the Supreme Court is weighing a couple of questions when they're looking at these lawsuits. One is, of course, whether the plaintiffs who brought on these cases have standing, whether the arguments are actually valid, that they can strike down this federal program. And the other questions that they're looking at is whether the authority the administration has put forth is actually something they can do. So if the Supreme Court ends up striking down this plan altogether, what they would probably be doing is just saying, sorry, you can't move forward using the HEROES Act. So that doesn't mean that federal debt relief is doomed forever. It ultimately means that the Biden administration will have to take a step back, think about how they can pursue a different route. But they would be effectively saying that the way Biden chose to go about it this time isn't legal.
It would also be humorous, I think, if it goes the other way. In other words, if the Supreme Court says, well, we're not going to rule on the legality of the student loan forgiveness. We're just going to say that these states did not have standing to bring this lawsuit. So too bad the program continues, or maybe it kicks it back. And maybe it's the two students that they get standing for their lawsuit because they didn't qualify for the $20,000 because of their income threshold. Maybe they get standing, but the states don't. It feels like it's almost like a Rubik's Cube of different outcomes that could come here.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a ton of confusion that these lawsuits have brought, not only because it's student loan borrowers who have been suing, but just because it's so unprecedented that a federal program to help millions could risk being struck down in a variety of ways.
And then for people who don't sort of follow the US Supreme Court, cases that are heard January, February usually get settled towards the beginning of the summertime. They're usually some of the last cases on the docket where we get opinions. So we might not know about this until the last few weeks in June or maybe the first week in July, right?
Yes, that's correct. And that's why payments probably won't resume until after June 30th.
You have a gut in terms of which way this is gonna go?
That is the big question right now. I would just say, the Supreme Court is conservative. The lower court rulings have been conservative. So, I think if that gives borrowers any sense of where it would go, I think that's all we can really go off of right now.
It's probably unfair for me to ask credible reporters their opinion on how things will go. But let's assume you're covering the February 28th hearing. How will you determine what the headline is? Is it based on the questioning? Is it based on the where the justices seem to be going? Where does your headline come from on that day?
Yeah, I think that the questioning will be really indicative of where the conversation is headed. We've seen that in prior arguments that the Supreme Court has brought, where the questioning has been really, really fruitful, and it's it kind of shows where the justices are leaning in one way or the other. So I think that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on, especially how much they dig into both arguments on each side.
And it's going to be a fascinating argument at the Supreme Court on February 28th, and then even more intriguing to see what they do by perhaps the end of June on student loan forgiveness and the Biden administration's plan to forgive up to $20,000 for people who make up to $125,000 a year. Ayelet Sheffi, she's the senior economic reporter for Insider. Ayelet, thanks for joining us and doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. And that'll do it for this edition of The Conversation. On behalf of Asher Cofield, Gina Kim, Craig Lowry, Bart Kyle, and the entire team at the Young Turks, I'm David Schuster. Thanks for watching.
Hey everyone, Mateo Scarapo here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now, but it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it, I hope that you enjoy it, and if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Hello, beloveds. I have a big announcement. I'm launching a new daily 1-hour show with the Young Turks called Unbossed with Nina Turner, starting October 17th. We are going to be taking on corruption in all of its forms, whether it's big money, big pharma, the injustice system, the establishment of both parties. All that we love is on the line. They keep coming for the people, not serving the people. Now we're coming for them. Anytime anyone, anywhere tries to take power from the people, that is where we will be together on Unbossed. And not only are we going to take on these people, we're also going to have a little joy while we fight. What is life without having some joy? The channel's already up, so go subscribe now, yes, right now, at youtube.com/unbossedtyt.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Get some!
Drop it like it's the 13th vote for the Speaker of the House. Cenk Uygur, Adrian Lawrence, and the Rolla. John Idarola hosts the Damage Report with a nice unbossed t-shirt.
ShopTYT.com.
There you go, ShopTYT.com. Adrian, of course, host of Overruled at Rebel headquarters, and like Kevin McCarthy, has been overruled. 13 down, maybe just one more to go. We're gonna give you all the details. McCarthy was on the ropes, but it looks like he might have been playing rope-a-dope with Matt Gaetz.
Spoil the whole thing.
I'm not going to spoil the beans.
That's my
That's your thing.
Is meaningless now.
That's your thing. God damn it, I ruined it all. All right, let's try to have a decent show anyway, even though I have ruined it from the beginning of the show. All right, the Rolla.
During the first break, I'm going to look up some story from the second hour, and I'm going to spoil it.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
Anyway.
This serves me right.
Okay, and also the host of the second hour. Okay, let's have some fun. We're going to start off with this.
Rosendale.
Kevin.
Hearn.
So things didn't necessarily go on day 4 exactly as Kevin McCarthy would have wanted, at least up until the 13th vote, which he lost, even though he was able to cut the opposition by more than half. And we're gonna project forward where that might go. But first of all, here are some of the names that did flip in this 13th round of voting. You can see a number of different flip names there. The final vote, Victoria Spartz, had been voting present for some of them, but she was always gonna vote for Kevin McCarthy, so that one doesn't necessarily count. But Andy Harris eventually signed on as well. And that left us after 13 votes. It's crazy that it got to that many, with just a few people remaining. Matt Rosendale, Andy Biggs, you got Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, and Crane as well. So that core 5, which is just enough with everyone in attendance for Kevin McCarthy to not become Speaker. If they hold strong, then he will not be Speaker, regardless of their threats or their offers or their phone calls from Donald Trump or whatever. But he says that he has the votes. They're gonna be coming back at, I believe, 10 p.m. Eastern, I think it might be.
10 p.m. Eastern,
10
John.
Eastern.
I have dramatic announcements in a minute. Keep going.
Well, when that happens, they will at least have the 14th vote. If that doesn't succeed, he has already said that it is possible they will be called into session throughout this weekend to make sure that actually happens. But he says he has the votes. He already did the counting. The 14th will be it. What do you both think?
All right, first dramatic announcement. It looks like Kevin McCarthy is going to be Speaker of the House. Is it premature after he's 0-13 so far? Yeah, of course, a little premature. That's why it's a slight prediction, but it's not a very bold prediction. Dramatic announcement number 2: Matt Gaetz looks like he's on the ropes. McCarthy used to be on the ropes, but now Gaetz is, and he's starting to sound conciliatory, which is very unlike Matt Gaetz. So it looks like him and Boebert are now beginning to come to terms with that they might lose. Now, let me show you one of the reasons they might lose. Let's go back to that list of the Republicans who have flipped. First of all, the fact that it is this large is obviously relevant, but I want to point out a couple of names on there. So number 5, Donalds. He was a very important part of the holdouts. The fact that he has buckled. Actually, I think is slightly predictable, but important. Number 10, Chip Roy, big flip. So he's one of the most conservative members of Congress. The fact that he is flipped is super relevant. But number 12 there, that's the big one, Paul Gosar. And Gosar is a bona fide lunatic. If Gosar is flipped, this thing is probably over. He was supposed to be one of the die-hard holdouts against McCarthy. There are 2 Republican congresspeople that are not in Washington right now. That's why they're waiting for them for the 10 o'clock vote tonight, okay? Probably with those 2, and he's got something, and McCarthy has one other vote probably in his back pocket. He will finally get what he's looking for. But my main dramatic announcement for a little bit later in this segment is, was the Gaetz faction correct in what they did? Interesting. First, Adrian, what do you think?
All right, so I don't necessarily know if they were right in what they did. I find it to be very interesting that they're now down to 5. I like to call them the fascist 5. And I'd like to think that they are very much agents of chaos. And so I don't think they've ever been negotiating in good faith here. I don't think there was anything that they could be provided in any way that would make them look at the situation in a rational, logical way and enter these debates with the thought of maybe we can come to some kind of agreement that suits everyone's needs. No, not at all. Again, I think they are agents of chaos. And I think that's in part because they are just this unyielding far right kind of agenda as members of the House, and they want to cause upheaval. And so I think this is the start of that, and it's very much a reflection in their actions. But I don't necessarily know that all the individuals that they initially had on their side will support them at the end of the day if they continue with these type of antics throughout their time in Congress.
Yeah, I definitely want to have that conversation about whether this was all good strategy. If we can, let's hold that off to the B block, because that's where I've got that. But for now though, look, you were right. When I saw Gosar, I thought, well, first of all, I thought that I had read it wrong. When I first read that he had flipped, I didn't believe it. And so since he had pitched himself as such a diehard, I guess my question then would be, what caused him to flip? It's possible that he just forgot what his previous position had been, that a different part of his brain was in charge at that point. He is legitimately insane. Was it the concessions, which we can briefly go back over those? He agreed to propose a rules change that would allow just a single member to call for a vote to oust him as speaker.
As you go through that, John, I just want to comment real quick on each one of them. Okay. So on the that issue of one person being able to say, I want a new speaker, right? Well, that goes to Adrian's point, agents of chaos. So we can go through these 14 votes again and again and again. Anytime one guy raises his hand and goes, nah, I'd like to do it again, okay? Yeah. So, but at the same time, it is a concession. It used to be 5, now it's just 1. So they did win something.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean too much, like procedurally. If you couldn't get 5 people to agree to call for the vote, then you were never gonna win the vote anyway. It's more symbolically, to me, it's making Kevin McCarthy bow down before you. It's symbolic moves to show, no, you are going to be hemmed in. Even if you become speaker, we're gonna continue to hound you on important votes and things like that. But then you've also got, okay, how many members from the Freedom Caucus are going to get to serve on the House Rules Committee? They're going to be moving that up to, at least as of what had previously been reported, 1/3 of the committee would be from the Freedom Caucus. So they'd be able to figure out a lot about which bills actually come up for a vote and under what circumstances.
Hold on that one. I say that is substantive because they could actually affect a lot of what they vote on based on what the rules are for what they vote on. So it's both substantive and, to Adrian's point, agents of chaos. Because if you're on the rules committee, you can throw a lot of monkey wrenches into the rules and make things much, much harder to go forward, or much easier if it's tax breaks for the rich. So, but it is substantive, and they did win something there.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, it's technically substantive. It's not as substantive as it would be if it was, and we'll talk about this later, like the squad wanting to make sure we can pass certain bills. And of course, the Senate can vote it down, and of course, it can be vetoed. So long term, not necessarily super important, although if they were to take over the Senate and the White House in 2024, then it's probably important that they'll be able to do this. You've also got a couple of specific bills, which are again, technically substantive. So Lauren Boebert have been talking about some sort of border security bill. I don't know why they needed to twist Kevin McCarthy's arm to do this. Did anyone think that over the next 2 years they weren't gonna try to do some like draconic sort of border bill? I don't know why that was a hard point in the negotiations, but they acted as if it was. But also a bill on, for instance, term limits on members. That one I think is an interesting thing to debate. I don't know how much that I actually trust that the people who are pushing for it would actually support it if they thought it was gonna go through. Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz don't wanna be term limited out of their time in Congress, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're more principled than I'm giving them credit for.
Yeah, so those two are very substantive because they're policy. So give them credit that they cared enough to get some sort of policy concessions. Now, term limits is the more substantive one and is part of Matt Gaetz' anti-corruption agenda. It's the worst part of Matt Gaetz' anti-corruption agenda. The other 4 items are actually pretty good, okay? And term limits is debatable, but it was the weakest of his proposals. So they took the weakest anti-corruption one.
Yeah.
And don't worry, they know the Senate's gonna vote it down anyway, even if the House passes it. So it is a little bit of showmanship for sure. The border security one, well, look, that one seems like a layup for Republicans. On the other hand, $15 minimum wage seemed like a layup for us, and that didn't happen. So you never know. So probably they'll lose on all those things, but at least they got concessions on votes that they might not have otherwise had.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a couple more than Adrian. I'm curious as to your thoughts. They also got a 72-hour notice from release of legislation before voting on it. It's a minor thing. It's like mainly a pot shot at Nancy Pelosi for dropping bills and then quickly voting on them. But they don't read the bills anyway. Let's keep it real. Neither do the Republicans. Vote on a balanced budget amendment that is also substantive. And that one, I don't know where that one's gonna go. That one could cause trouble, okay? And then individual votes on each of the 12 appropriation bills and excluding earmarks from such bills. Excluding earmarks, very substantive. And then votes on individual appropriation bills could be substantive. So honestly, guys, like I thought their strategy would have been way, way, way better if they had picked one thing and focused on it throughout. And every time the press said, oh, they're just wasting time or they're just being jerks, they were like, no, we have an anti-corruption agenda. And they put together and they put forward Matt Gaetz' entire agenda on that. Again, it sounds like I'm giving Matt Gaetz a lot of credit. No, he's terrible on everything else, but we're a rare show in media that's honest. And so his anti-corruption agenda is pretty good. If he had just focused on that, that would have been a home run for them because then the country would be on their side no matter what the media said. So they didn't do that. That would have been a way better strategy. But as it stands, they did get a number of concessions. And if you use your leverage and at the end of the day you get concessions, I gotta say, well played. I don't know if I'm the only person in media that'll say it, but I think that they got something quasi-real and maybe actually real out of it. And so that's how you play politics. That's my thought. Adrian, what do you think?
No, I completely and totally agree with you. I think in part what they did, even though people might see the advancements and concessions as being somewhat small and not necessarily meaningful, what they did was pepper these changes with potential problems that they could interject to either slow them down or speed them up, whatever they prefer. But by interjecting these options, it gives them a whole lot more power in order to control what gets done so that those who fill their coffers, whether it be the lobbyists or the big companies or whatnot, that they can continue to cater to their needs. And also, again, I think this is a display of power. This is letting the other members of the GOP know that they plan on being chaotic and getting in the way of any potential progress, and that they need to be essentially, I wouldn't even say respected as much as it's kind of need to, in terms of they want their far right mentality and that their goals treated seriously and advanced through the GOP's agenda, and that this is a display of that, even if it looks like these advancements and these concessions are rather small minutia.
Yeah. I'll hold my thoughts for the B block when we were going to talk about that. But anyway, I do have a question though related to this entire process, because the interesting thing is that it appears that if he succeeds, and even to the extent that he already has flipped a bunch of the holdouts, it's because of the package of concessions that came out. The weird part about it was that those concessions appeared to have been solidified before all of the votes yesterday, and yet he hadn't gained a single vote as of then. It is possible that it wasn't down in writing, or maybe they added a couple of key things to it that wasn't in the initial reporting. But it seemed as if the concessions had been not well received by the holdouts as of yesterday. I'm also curious about, like, Kevin McCarthy, if he gets the speakership tonight, or even if he gets it tomorrow, or next week, or whatever, eventually people they'll forget about this. It'll be a historic footnote or whatever. His reputation will be what it's going to be. I think that a lot of trouble still lies ahead, even if he becomes the speaker. There's no reason to believe that these holdouts or some portion of them won't do this same sort of thing on every one of the appropriations bill and the debt ceiling lift and God knows what else, any other thing where the government actually needs to function. What I'm curious though is Donald Trump, remember, he had made those calls, personally appealed to each of these holdouts. And unless that had a delayed effect, just like the concessions, that didn't move a single person. So if Kevin McCarthy wins, then maybe it was a good strategy overall that Donald Trump encouraged people to vote for him. He can say, hey, I endorsed him. I look good, don't I? But his endorsement didn't appear to have moved the needle at all. And I wonder, will that be lost on people? What do you think his reputation, what hit might it take coming out of this?
Yeah, so I think Trump is totally irrelevant in this, for better or for worse. Like, so I don't think he moved the needle. I don't think he got hurt any much worse than he already was. The only way he's really going to get hurt is right-wing media, and they have turned on him. We've talked a lot about that, but I don't think this affected him much at all. I think two things that changed between the 12th vote and the 13th vote was that, no, I think that McCarthy did add a couple of extra concessions to the list as far as I saw. And what he might have also done is say to people like Gosar, okay, fine, not only are we gonna have 3 instead of 2 Freedom Caucus members on the Rules Committee, but you're gonna be one of them.
Dear God.
Right, and so those are the kind of, wheeling and dealing that, by the way, they're kind of supposed to do in politics, to get to a deal and to get to a compromise. So, but I don't want anybody to get what I'm saying wrong. I thought if it ends like this, I think actually the hard right wing did play it right. But what difference does it make? I mean, they're all competing about who's going to serve the rich more and better and shovel even more trillions of dollars over to the rich donors. So, like Matt Gaetz did a big fiery speech about how the only reason Kevin McCarthy is getting votes is because he raised $500 million and he's the LeBron James of special interest fundraising. That's all true, and I'm glad he said it. And by the way, on that, he has more courage than progressives do. He was very clear about that. We'll talk more about that on the show. But having said that, what difference does it make? Because Matt Gaetz is going to say, I'm now going to use the extra power that I have to get the rich even more money. Yeah. Well, then it's Kevin McCarthy agrees with you anyway. You guys are having a circle, you know what, about who can pleasure the rich more. It's so substantively on policies that pass at the end of the day, it will have no effect at all because they're all deeply, deeply in love with their donors.
Yeah.
And it did seem like Trump getting involved here actually hurt him more than anything in terms of having Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz be dismissive of whatever Trump wanted and saying he got it wrong. It essentially said you are not the leader of the right anymore and your thoughts are not relevant here. And so I really think that it made Trump look as minuscule as he is. And it said that you don't play a role and we are doing what we want to do, notwithstanding whatever your thoughts are. So I actually think it hurt him more trying to get involved and McCarthy trying to get him involved in some way, thinking that it would sway people.
Yeah. We're gonna see. I mean, I also, one final thought, I do wonder some of those possible last minute concessions, like you said, like whether it's the spots on the Rules Committee or I think it was Harris wanted some subcommittee of appropriations, wanted to be the chair of that. Maybe he got it, I don't know yet, we won't know for a little bit, but if he did, and if Gosar got rules or whatever, then somebody didn't. The people who actually stuck with Kevin McCarthy, who might have had far more seniority than these chuckleheads, they've now been pushed out. They can look forward to 2 years of continuing power amongst the craziest members of the caucus. I'm wondering what some of his longtime allies are actually thinking about this process coming out of it.
Yeah, they're not gonna be too happy. That's why they hated those 20 guys so much.
Yeah,
because it was personal for them.
Yeah. In any event, we do have to take our first break. When we come back, we're gonna be talking a little bit about contrasting this with some progressive attempts to use power. We'll be back in a second.
Okay, I need you to understand what the best newsletter in the country is. This progress report written by Jonathan Larson, our managing editor. It's really great. It's got a really perfectly sarcastic ring to it, right? And it really covers issues from a progressive perspective and gives you the real news. So it's great. Sign up at tyt.com/newsletter. I think you'll love it. Or you could do that QR code. Well, that's for progressive merch. No, that's the wrong PR code. Okay, that's all right. God bless. Do all of our QR codes. Why not? Spin the wheel. You can get annual membership and win exciting prizes. And usually when people say exciting prizes, they're lying, but not us. You can get a $100 Blue Apron gift card, which makes the membership worth it in and of itself, if not more, depending on which one you get. And then you've got shop TYT merch in there. You got Too Strong coffee in there.
Nice.
So tyt.com/spin or QR code, panic, go. All right, now let's go to member comments as usual. A guy from New York says, I think McCarthy is trying to beat Trump's court loss record. That's gonna be hard. They'd need about 62 votes to beat that record. Ian says, drop it like Kevin McCarthy's dreams of becoming a House Speaker. I know, I thought about saying that. That was at the top of my list, except we now think he probably will be. So that's why I didn't say it, but Ian, I like the way you're thinking. Boomer Dragon Cat says, still can't believe Boebert wanted to stick her neck out over this. After nearly being kicked out of office, you'd think she'd be keeping her head down, nose to the grindstone. No, actually, and Edward made this point yesterday, although not on the show, so you wouldn't know that. Anyways, Boebert was really mad at McCarthy for not having her back in a super close race. And that's how she perceived it. So this one was a super personal grudge for her. And Boebert's got barely 2 brain cells to rub together. So like the earmark, she's like, oh, are we marking ears now? What is this? Is this a Passover thing? What are we doing? Like she doesn't know what the hell's going on. She didn't care about substantive concessions. She just wanted to strike back at McCarthy. Jam says, dye that hair purple, John. I'm not giving up until I see violet locks blowing in the wind whenever you're on screen.
Okay, do not hold your breath.
Okay, all right, so John says not necessarily purple with the hair, but we're still looking out for it. Okay, now YouTube comments, YouTube members. So Fanuel asks, so is Biden a lame duck for the next 2 years? Definitely, that's like the most underreported story. He has a couple of executive orders he'll do and the corporate media will say, oh my God, what a strong and powerful president, those were so historic. They'll be largely meaningless. He's got nothing left to do. We'll be back. All right, Jay Huger, Adrian Lawrence, John Iadarola back on TYT, but I have these American heroes who have now joined us. Ezra Graves, Olusola Odentan, Jennifer Marcano, and then Joe Winterton with being awfully generous on Super Chat as well. We appreciate all of you guys. First 3 I read, new members, hence new Young Turks, hence they are the show. They help us put this together. All of our members are amazing. Hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join and come spread, I think as the Christians would say, the good news. So not often good news, but it's at least honest news. Okay, John.
Okay, let's jump into it. For years now, any progressive policy proposal, any bill, whether it's Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, anything like that, no matter how needed it might be, no matter how supported by the American people it might be, no matter how supported by academia and studies it might be, no matter how in line with the mainstream it might be, has been presented to the American people by most politicians on the Democratic and Republican sides, as well as the mainstream media, as radical, as out of the mainstream, as unacceptable, possibly communist. And in light of what's going on right now, some progressives have an issue with that. The fact that no matter how reasonable they are in fact being when it comes to policy, they are presented as extremists, and comparisons are made between them and some of the loonier members of the Freedom Caucus. Well, they're up to all sorts of shenanigans this week, and so Commenting on that, we have an interview with The Independent by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who had this to say. I mean, I think it just highlights how extraordinarily bad faith those accusations of progressive unreasonableness are, even when they come from our side of the aisle, which they very often do. I think whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, what this whole episode really indicates and shows us is, again, just how bad faith and substanceless the argument and accusation is that progressives are just as bad as those insurrectionist Republicans. And she talked a little bit about some of the demands of progressive politicians, saying, when we make demands and pull the line on something, it's based on policy, on substance, and something that frankly, usually every time has a path of possibility. We offer a plan B and we look at the reality and push ourselves. Yes, push as hard as we can, but we also have an understanding of what is best for the country. And I think that that's interesting. I know that we're gonna have an interesting conversation about this. I actually think, while she's commenting on the strategy of the holdouts who didn't want to support Kevin McCarthy, I actually think the point that she's making will be more accurate later on. Stopping Kevin McCarthy from becoming speaker for a week or something sure looks bad for Kevin McCarthy now, we get a good chuckle, but if he becomes speaker, then we're all gonna move on and eventually forget that it happened. There's not that much damage that can be done there. Some of the concessions that were made to them could be damaging in the long run. God only knows what the Rules Committee is gonna look like. But I'm far more worried about what's gonna happen amongst the Boeberts and the Gaetzes and all that when, for instance, the debt ceiling needs to be raised, or other incredibly important base level functions of government need to happen, and those are held up for weeks for personal grudges and things like that. And I do think that we will continue to see comparisons between, Rashida Tlaib on student debt or Ilhan Omar on healthcare to whatever it is that's driving Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert on any given day. What do you think? So
on the one hand, I agree nearly 100% with what AOC said. When they say that the Squad or Just Democrats are the same as these extreme right wing and the Freedom Caucus, it's an absurd, indefensible point. It's the kind of point that corporate media makes on purpose to make it seem like any change is terrible, terrible. But wait a minute, doesn't it depend on what kind of change? Like, oh, my life is mediocre right now, I'd like some change. All right, great, I'm gonna slash your tires. Then you'll have some change. Wait, no, I didn't want that, I wanted positive change. Oh, I'm gonna get you gas money. Oh, that's positive change, I like that. Doesn't it make a difference what the change is? No, I'm a cable news anchor. All change bad. I was hired to say all change bad. In fact, I was paid millions of dollars to say all change bad. Okay, so let's talk about the issues that, and John brought up one of them. The right wing, the extreme right wing says, actually most of the right wing says, oh, debt ceiling, we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling. Now, most of the Republicans don't mean it because they work for the donors, and the donors definitely want the debt ceiling raised. And by the way, the Democrats are like, yes, we're gonna raise the debt ceiling. Yes, donors, don't worry, okay? So that's a huge factor in this. But overall, should they raise the debt ceiling? Of course, we already spent the money. Not raising the debt ceiling means, we're just not gonna pay our bills. And you know what happens then? The dollar crashes, the economy crashes. Certainly the US economy crashes in a giant way. That's why the donors don't want it. But that's why we don't want it either. We don't want the economy to crash. You're gonna get hurt worse than anybody else. It's threatening not to raise the debt ceiling. That's just like, that's like suicide bombing equivalent in politics. Saying, I'm going to destroy the whole goddamn country because I'm an idiot and I'm an anarchist, right? And so, but I doubt even Matt Gaetz means it. They just use it as a trick. Go, all right, fine. We'll raise the debt ceiling if you give another $1 trillion to the rich, okay? But that's insane to even threaten. On the other hand, progressives like AOC want paid family leave. Don't change if you're a cable news anchor, right? Or work at the New York Times. Paid family leave polls at 80%. How could 80% of the country be radical? If they're radicals, just as Democrats are, progressives are, and 80% of the country agrees with them, are you sure you know what the word radical means? Okay, because all of mainstream media, yes, for the uninitiated, including your beloved New York Times, for a lot of people on the left and the center, they think the New York Times is the Bible brought down by God, okay? No, the New York Times despises change. And they don't care at all what the goddamn change is. In fact, and I'd say this generally for mainstream media, they're much more worried about progressives because they have proposals that are very, very popular. And if you give them a tiny bit of oxygen, they could actually pass. And so that's a real threat. Whereas the debt ceiling is just to move the Overton window, and it's just theatrics, and everyone knows it. But they will not report it to you under penalty of law. So, okay, so that's my agreement with AOC. The problem here is, no, you're still too defensive. Play offense. So she's saying here, hey, you see that? We were so reasonable in giving in to Nancy Pelosi. No, but you shouldn't have given in to Nancy Pelosi. So there's so many issues they could have fought 1,000 times harder on. And by the way, so they're like, you see how the right wing clowned itself? Yeah, the media piled on. They were always going to do that. By the way, they didn't actually clown themselves, as we talked about earlier in the show. They got 7 and ranging from small to significant concessions. So that's 7 more than they had before. So it was actually relatively well played. But imagine if progressives did that, not on goofy forced to vote things of like, oh, I'm gonna get them to vote on Medicare for all and that there's no God and whatever other things that they are imagining, right? I love Medicare for all, but it had a 0% chance of passing last term. If you think that's not true, you don't know politics at all, okay? In order for it to pass, you have to build a great number of steps, and we should be building those right now, and progressives in Congress are not doing nearly enough. But there are many other proposals that we have that could have passed when we had the majority in Congress and we had the presidency. $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, child tax credit, we can go on and on and on. So imagine if progressives had held up Congress for any vote and said, we want $15 minimum wage. It polls at around 65 to 70%. Then what are you gonna do? Even corporate media would be like, it's a radical, higher wages for everybody. Nobody wants higher wages, right? And then they get more unpopular and the progressives get more popular, okay? That's how you play this game. Stop being defensive. Go on the goddamn offense, and you shouldn't brag about how you complied to Nancy Pelosi. You should say, next time, wait till you see what we do to Hakeem Jeffries. But they would never say that, because that's the third rail in Washington. The beloved Democratic colleagues cannot be touched.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. The thing is that when it comes to the squad and the progressive movement there in Congress, it seems that they very much share a core principle or ideology, at least with the vast majority of the Dem base there in Congress. And I think that is what is extremely different here from what's going on with these Freedom Caucus holdout, these fascist 5, is that they're operating under a whole different set of principles in terms of their far right agenda, the disconnect in terms of them levying these retributive, I'm getting back at you kind of things when it comes to McCarthy. And also it seems that these fascist 5 kind of holdout, what I'd like to think is that they're really sending this larger rallying cry, because as we've seen across the globe, there have been a number of countries in terms of their governments standing up in that right-wing kind of mentality and mindset, whether it be Italy or Israel or these other nations. And I think that that's kind of what Gaetz and Boebert and the rest of them are trying to do here, to get the headlines, to say, we've got a far-right faction in our legislature too, and we are wreaking havoc and causing change too. And so that is something that very much, I think it's very disturbing. And it would be really great if the progressives had that same radical nature in Congress. But unfortunately, based on what we've seen, and also as you've noted, Cenk, that people don't want to touch that third rail in Washington, I don't necessarily think we're going to see that kind of radical pushback and movement as we're seeing from these far right members of Congress right now.
Yeah. Final comment I'll make about this is, I think while some in the media have just been totally against any holdouts for any reason from the very beginning, and while I've laughed at the fact that he's lost all the votes from the very beginning, I've been saying on the Damage Report, they are under no obligation to support anyone for speaker. I just have 2 small problems with the way they're doing it. It's not fundamentally any problem with them trying to hold out for concessions or whatever. The more minor one is, be honest about what you actually want. I don't like politicians lying to us. I don't like when Kyrsten Sinema votes against a bill and says it's for one reason when it's really to protect her donors. I don't like when Lauren Boebert says that she'll vote for Kevin McCarthy when he goes down to the 1-member threshold and then he does it and she doesn't vote for him. She was lying. I think we should be honest. More substantively though, They're doing all of this stuff, getting all these concessions, and the vast majority of it is either symbolic or personal. Like they're not actually staking their political future on something that will benefit their constituents, some bold policy that the actual economic establishment is against. So I know a lot of people are gonna try to draw these big lessons about this experience and try to say, they should do the exact same thing. Well, they should learn some lessons from it, and they should be willing to do it regardless. But we didn't see Lauren Boebert willing to torpedo her career because she can't take the fact that too many people in her district can't afford health insurance or whatever. Like that's not what we had. It's about getting onto committees. It's about making a name for themselves in the media. And that I don't think is as praiseworthy. They were successful in their goals. I just take issue with their actual goals.
Yeah, I have one more thing to say too. Look, at this point, progressives have nothing to lose. It's not like before they were bullied because, if you guys don't get in line, we won't pass the one thing that Joe Manchin wants. But that worked. They're like, okay, we'll take 15% of what we were originally hoping for because it's better than 0%. Look, I don't think they had good leadership. I don't think they had good strategy or courage. Yeah, I said it, okay. I thought they were very weak in how they fought back. But at least I understood, hey, 15% is better than 0%, right? But now they're gonna get 0% anyway. The Republicans in the House are gonna block everything. So there's no reason to hold back for any reason other than, I don't like being bullied by Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic establishment and Joe Biden and corporate media. Well, if you don't like being bullied by the establishment, then you shouldn't have pretended that you were against the establishment. Your job, if you're in the squad, if you're a Justice Democrat, is to fight them. It's not to say, hey, we are so respectable and respectful, and we will just sit here and do nothing. You have 2 years to kick ass now because you're not gonna win the votes anyway. So why would you then bow your head to people who are opposed to you? And yes, I mean Democrats. Saying, Republicans are bad. That's the easiest thing in the world and it's irrelevant. Okay, it's relevant when you're fighting against them in an election. It's not relevant while you're legislating for these 2 years. What is relevant is, for example, here I'll tell you, we're not destructive on TYT, we're constructive. The reason that we have the passion, the energy, etc., is to fight for you guys. But you have to be strategic. So, for example, if progressives were to say, come hell or high water, we demand a vote on $15 minimum wage. Well, the Republicans would go, no way, we're not gonna do a vote on higher wages. Good, you see how you put them in a bad spot, right? And then you pound on it and pound on it and pound on it until the entire country knows Republicans, and by the way, corporate Democrats, are against higher wages.
Yep.
And by the way, yes, as you do that, the Republicans will say, 8 Democratic senators voted against the $15 minimum wage last time. And then you know what you say at that point? You say, goddamn right they did, and I can't wait to primary them. Oh my God, but that would be disrespectful. We would be playing hardball politics. Yes, that's what you're supposed to do. And so, but are they gonna do that? She said we pushed as hard as we could. I agree with everything else you said. The media paints you completely wrong, but at the same time, you did not push as hard as you can. And right now you have no excuse left not to push 200%, but they probably won't.
Okay, we're gonna leave you with that for now. We're gonna take a quick break, but come back, we got more to talk about.
Everyone's like, oh my God, in and out. And I'm like, my controversial non-political opinion is that it's overrated.
Wrong.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to member comments again. MACE 54321 said another major difference between the right wing and the progressives in Congress is the right wing actually gets what they want. Yeah, of course, because they want things that benefit the rich and the powerful. That's what the entire system is built to do. You know why? It was built by the rich and the powerful. And guys, I'm not talking about the founders. I'm not talking about 1776. I'm talking about 1978, when the rich and the powerful captured the Supreme Court. And they said, you can now bribe politicians. You can give them billions of dollars. Okay, so that was pre-Citizens United. They killed our democracy, and ever since then, all politicians have ever done is serve the rich and the powerful. And what has the media done? Serve the rich and the powerful. So the media is the matrix. They're the ones that are supposed to create the illusion of conflict, create the illusion of one of the good cops working for you, when in reality it's good cop, bad cops both screwing you over. And it doesn't have to be that way. It could be progressives that overturn the Democrats in primary fights. Yes, the media will yell at you. If the media is not yelling at you, you are doing nothing. You're affecting no change whatsoever. Okay, so I have 1,000 stories about that. But anyways, DJ Dragon says, I love the progress report. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you for saying that. TYT.com/newsletter. That's how you sign up for it. Veda Delset says, thanks, Cenk, for the news. Thanks, Bart, for the extravaganza music. Okay, so there you go. Dragonfire Mathematician X says, anyone think we should seriously consider primarying the entire squad from the left? I am beginning to think about this and it hurts. No, guys, it's a waste of time. Look, they're there already. They're not bad people. They don't have bad intent. I'm being honest with you guys, and I've already burned all my bridges, because my job is to be honest with you guys. And reality is that they got brainwashed. They went in there and the culture took over, and inside the bubble of Washington, they really genuinely believe speaking out against other Democrats is like a crime against humanity. And when they do it so carefully in tiny amount, and then they get roaring, media attacks against them, and they go, and they think they're heroes because they did 1% or 2% or 5%, when they don't realize the rest of us are screaming from outside the bubble, do more, right? But they're not bad people. The minute they get an actual leader that can actually do strategy, they're gonna do the right thing. Don't waste your time primarying them. Go primary other Democratic incumbents and try to give them strength. Yes, sometimes through supporting them, and yes, sometimes through criticizing them. But guys, nuance and balance is always the right answer. If you just go, okay, I'm gonna criticize them, so let's go to their house and threaten their safety. No. You have to do it in a constructive way, as we're trying to show you here. All right, and all right, El, and then a funny one. Oh, and the Schmoopy Dragon says, I've never noticed until someone mentioned today that Gaetz looks like Butthead, and now I can't unsee it. Good point. Back on TYT, Cenk, Sean, and Adrian with you guys, but also Axel the Ghost, Steve Pfift, and Scott Riching. They all just became members and also became American heroes. It's PIFT, but capitalized. I don't know. Anyways, all right, love you guys. Thanks for doing the show with us and getting the word out. And I'm gonna read one quick comment from Twitch. There's a lot like these, but Kruger Like Freddy wrote in, I have so much respect and love for Adrian. I hope to be half as accomplished one day.
Oh. So kind, thank you.
Yeah, really I agree with John. That's a big, oh. Okay, all right.
Does that earn a Blue Apron gift card or just laughing? If you make us,
No, oh, it's too many compliments. So I don't want fake compliments. These are real, authentic compliments. So
I'll take either.
No, I don't want to incentivize that. But anyway, we got to keep going. But you guys are amazing. Thank you for writing in and saying that. And
okay.
You can check out Adrian, by the way, on Rebel Headquarters. Her segment's called Overruled. Make sure you're all watching that. All right, John, sorry.
Nice. Okay, let's jump into a fight. Okay, we got a fight. Ian Fury is a spokesperson for South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, and he was reached out for comment on a topic that almost doesn't matter what the topic was, and decided to go like both barrels blazing at Ron DeSantis. And this is going to be about abortion, kind of, technically, but it's really about 2024, and that's what makes it so much fun. So he was contacted by National Review reporter Nate Hochman about the quote unquote transgender lobby in South Dakota. Fury responded with a lengthy statement rejecting any implication that Governor Noem is overly cozy with the major lobbying groups that helped kill a long line of anti-gender ideology bills in the state. But in a follow-up email, he pivoted to an unprompted diatribe, this is in the words of the reporter who reached out to him, about the contrast between Noem and DeSantis' records on the issue of abortion, which, and I can't stress this enough, is not what he had been asked about at all, or Florida, or any of this. He argued that Governor Noem was the only governor in America on national television defending the Dobbs decision. He then queried, where was Governor DeSantis? Hiding behind a 15-week ban. Does he believe that 14-week-old babies don't have a right to live? DeSantis, he continued, just terminated his pro-life secretary for AHCA, Simone Marsteller, the most pro-life member of his cabinet. Florida Right to Life is embarrassed by Governor DeSantis' record, so they invited Governor Noem to speak at their annual conference in October 2021. He closed out the email by speculating as to whether National Review was no longer pro-life, because that's the message you send by carrying water for Governor DeSantis. So, geez, like if I was Nate Hochman, I mean, I don't know Nate Hochman, this is for the National Review, probably a bad guy, but I don't know. I don't think he knew what he was signing up for when he reached out for a comment from Governor Noem. But anyway, look, it's technically the spokesperson, and we've yet to see what like DeSantis' spokesperson will respond with. But this is clearly initial little blows for 2024 from two people who are at the very least B, if not in the case of Noem, tier C candidates.
No, I love this because A, it has begun. Gentlemen, start your engines. In this case, ladies and gentlemen. Because number one, it's a fight between two potential 2024 candidates, and they're now finally hitting each other. I haven't seen Republicans hit each other in the presidential race since all the way back in 2016, and even then they barely hit Trump. And oops, that was a mistake. So here they are, and we're really early on, right? The primaries are in about a year, and this is the first real punch. So the fight has commenced. Also note, interesting, that it is not about Donald Trump. Now apparently Noem's camp thinks Trump is not relevant, and they're hitting DeSantis, okay? Now, by the way, be careful with that strategy. That's what happened in 2016 when no one hit Trump and they just hit each other, and next thing you know, Trump won. But it is interesting that she thinks the water is safe to attack other potential Republican candidates, okay? And if she thought, no, Trump's gonna win this thing, even showing that you're interested in running would have been a third rail. So that it does go to diminished power for Trump for sure, okay? Now, John, though, the National Review, yeah, it was a bit, if seemingly random, how much this guy, unleashed on DeSantis. I don't know if it was Ian Fury or Nick Fury. But it is not as random as it looks. Almost all of right-wing media is blanket supporting DeSantis.
That's true.
So I think that, for example, you say it'd be interesting to see what DeSantis is gonna reply. My guess is not gonna reply at all. You know why? Because he doesn't need to. He has right-wing media doing his work for him.
Yeah.
It's like finally a wall has been built, but it is to protect Ron DeSantis. So they were writing an article to randomly crap on Kristi Noem on the transgender issue when don't worry, she hates transgender people just as much as other Republicans do. And she, you couldn't control your lobby in South Dakota. And what a random weird attack against Noem, right?
Yeah, that's
and it's done on behalf of DeSantis, and that's why Nick's brother Ian sends this fiery response back.
Yeah,
Adrian.
I find it very entertaining to a certain extent. I used to teach media messaging, and in that was teaching people how to pivot when they didn't like the question. And this was a hell of a pivot. It was damn near an about face with maybe an uppercut in it. It really told you that this is what I want to talk about and this is what I'm lashing out about. And I just don't think it's that great of a look for Noem. And I think you're absolutely right, Cenk. I do not think DeSantis is going to engage in any way because, as you mentioned, he has right-wing media on his side. But I just definitely don't think this is the way to go about it in terms of being so aggressive to the point where you just kind of look not only out of pocket, but kind of like you're not necessarily working with a full deck. But if that is the way in which Noem's people want to go, God bless her. I just don't know how far the Lord will deliver them blessings.
Yeah. I want to add just one more thing because it's something that I had missed that happened last year at CPAC, actually. And I guess what I'm gonna read for you makes what you just saw, the second hit against DeSantis from Noem, because we did have one earlier, and it represents, I think, a much more significant potential weakness for DeSantis. Who knows if it'll end up mattering, but the idea that you're attacking him for a 15-week ban because he should have done a 14-week ban, it seems a little bit weak to me. I think most Republicans believe that Ron DeSantis would make abortion illegal across the entire country if he had the chance to. But back in March of 2021, you had CPAC, and during their straw poll for 2024, one in which that did not include Donald Trump, by the way, Noem actually placed second after Ron DeSantis, which is interesting. And at her speech at that event, she said, we've got Republican governors across this country pretending they didn't shut down their states, that they didn't close their beaches, that they didn't mandate masks, that they didn't need to issue shelter-in-place orders. Now, I'm not picking fights with Republican governors. All I'm saying is that we need leaders with grit, that their first instinct is to make the right decision, that they don't backtrack and then try to fool you into the fact that they never made the wrong decision. And that, there's a couple people that could in theory be about, but it pretty clearly is Ron DeSantis for very briefly and begrudgingly shutting down Florida and then eagerly opening it back up and allowing as many Floridians as possible to needlessly die from COVID.
Yeah, and she's also referring to Abbott. By the way, South Dakota, one of the few states that had a worse death rate from COVID than Florida. So she's literally bragging about how many more people she got killed than DeSantis. But guys, I'm gonna disagree with you guys a little bit. One, she's getting media attention. If everybody's supporting DeSantis and it looks like it's a coronation, you've got to somehow get media attention. So I think that's the right place. Second of all, remember Republican voters love anything that's vicious.
That's true.
Yeah, so when her guy viciously attacks DeSantis and takes a more right-wing position on abortion, they're gonna like both of those things. Don't think in terms of us, think in terms of the voters they're trying to reach. But finally, speaking of voters that we want to reach, we're doing a super random poll on this story. We started with the catfight intro, which we've used many times before. And we're wondering now, is it a little out of date? If there were two women in the story, we'd have never run the intro, okay? In this case, there was one woman in the story. A lot of times when we were
second hand, it was technically
two guys,
two men,
but there was a woman behind the guy, right? But often we run it with two guys, but still, catfight, it's a good question. I don't know. That's why we're asking. If I knew, I wouldn't ask you. Should we stop doing the catfight intro? Yes or no? tyt.com/polls. Let the American people decide. And the results of this poll will be binding. Okay.
Like, just in case the vote goes wrong, Bart's like, no, we're doing it again. Or actually, I guess it wouldn't have been Bart. But
we got one more. Adrian, what do you think?
Well, about the catfight intro?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask Maverick, but I don't know. Well, hey, he's right here bothering me. But as far as the intro goes, I thought it was relatively gender neutral by virtue of the fact that there were male faces on it. But if there is something synonymous that would be, I guess, not conjuring up some kind of sexist thing, then go for it. But otherwise, it didn't bother me.
I think we could come up with a cool new segment that gets across the same idea. That's my view, but it is a funny intro. I do like it. It's so old school. Sarah Palin's on it.
Yeah.
Like that's when it was made.
I know. So by the way, we'll have the link to the poll in the description box below. Go ahead and tell us what you think is the right direction. All right,
yes.
John, what's next?
Okay, let's jump into probably our last story, starting off with this.
I do want to announce that today I nominated an individual, an exceptional jurist, Judge Hector LaSalle, to be the chief judge of the New York State Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals is the highest court in the land. It is a position of great authority and prestige.
Okay, so this is really fascinating. So you have Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, who is going to be trying to appoint Hector LaSalle, who had been appointed to the appeals court by former Governor Cuomo before his massive scandals and all that, to elevate him. And here is the issue with that. She does not need to take a guy with the record of Hector LaSalle and give him this position. We don't have time to run through his entire record necessarily, but whether you're talking about labor rights, women's rights, regulations on the police, oversight, a lot of these different topics, he has a record that, particularly in New York, where they have so much Democratic representation in the state legislature, that they very much could have a far less right-wing candidate to be elevated in the way that Kathy Hochul is elevating him right now. A number of members of the Democratic Party in New York are speaking out against it. At least a dozen state Senate Democrats publicly oppose LaSalle, including the chamber's deputy majority leader. By the way, Democrats currently control 42 seats in the 63-seat New York Senate. So these defections mean that LaSalle cannot be confirmed without Republican votes. And I would just ask you the question, if you have to go to the other party to get this judge, why not just get a judge that your party isn't so vigorously opposed to?
Yeah, I mean, look at what we're seeing in Congress right now. The Republicans could have had Kevin McCarthy as their speaker 12 votes ago, if they just went to the Democrats and got a couple of conservative Democrats who definitely would have played ball for some minor concession, right? In my opinion. But they're like, no, going to the Democrats is heresy among Republicans. Whereas Democrats are like, well, we could go with the progressive wing of our own party, or we could go with Republicans. Easy question, easy answer, Republicans. Why? Kathy Hochul, like most establishment Democrats, are actually Republicans, and especially on economic issues, and judges decide a lot of cases, including, by the way, not just criminal cases, but civil cases against corporations.
Yeah.
So the corporate donors of Hochul, and by the way, before her, Andrew Cuomo, who stacked the New York courts with wall-to-wall conservative justices, right? All to please their donors. And why can they get away with this brazen betrayal of their own voters? Because the media never calls them out on it. They just go, oh, what a wonderfully moderate Democrat, bravo, right? And in fact, if she sided with the progressives, probably New York Times and others would yell at her.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right. And I was going to bring up that exact fact. The fact is that Andrew Cuomo was just the same. The establishment Democrats that are really just masquerading as right-wingers when it comes to actually lifting up we the people. And Kathy Hochul is no exception as a Republican in Dems clothing. It's New York being that Democratic stronghold of a state. It really is the epicenter when it comes to wealth and a lot of things in the United States in terms of progress and what people want. And the thing is that the people have already elected so many members of legislature there that are representative of their belief system, are representative of their democratic principles. And yet you have individuals like Hochul out here doing her damnedest to counteract that just so she can appease her donors. And it is just so incredibly disheartening because not only does it alienate the people, but what it does is it bolsters up the wealthy and continues to feed what they want. It's just so incredibly, just again, disheartening, especially because these people got D's next to their names when that's not who they are, much like Mayor Eric Adams.
Yeah, look, the media is absurd because they will tell you that the millions of dollars that Hochul and Cuomo took from corporate donors didn't affect these decisions at all. That they just randomly, they were like, hey, you know what? Even though we're Democrats, why don't we go really conservative for judges that vote on and decide issues that affect billions of dollars for corporations when they get sued?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? Oh, just randomly, because when it comes to economic issues, we're super conservative. But New York Times never dare point that out, okay? And by the way, when they run for office, what does almost all of the media do? All the way from local news to radio to cable news to the newspapers. Incumbent, radical. I'm sorry, the primary against the incumbent is a radical thing to do. And why are they creating lack of unity in the Democratic Party? Why don't you unify behind the more conservative Democrat, the more corporate Democrat, the more right-wing Democrat? Oh, these pesky progressives trying to actually be Democrats, right? And in fact, they will often paint the progressives that are better Democrats as Republicans because they're daring to challenge a Democratic incumbent.
Yeah.
And so that's why you get the result that you do, because the refs are bought and the politicians are bought. So the whole system is bought by the rich and powerful. So no matter how many times you vote for what is ostensibly the left-wing party in a deeply left-wing state like New York, you're never going to get left-wing judges because of the donor system and the corruption. And you're never going to get in a media that's going to be honest with you about that.
I think we're out of time.
Yeah, we are definitely out of time. All right, everybody check out John on Damage Report, great host of that program every day here on the Young Turks network, the TYT network. And Adrian's on Rebel Headquarters, great videos, make sure you check that out. Now in the next hour, buckle up, brace for impact. One of the biggest conservatives in the country accused of molestation of a male staffer. Yeah. Damn, we'll be back.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K through 12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction.
So what if I have 35? Don't hit me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Truly believe that this is a human being. This,
without a doubt.
Without a doubt?
Yes.
This is a dolphin fetus.
Sexual anarchy.
Drop it like it's a New Year's ball. All right, power, 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 we're all in person, what the hell? Jake Uger, Ben Gleeb, Helen Hong. TYT power panel for sure. I did kind of a soft drop it on that one, just to mix things up.
You dropped it like it's soft.
Yeah. But I felt it. I felt the drop.
Yeah. And I mainly got it from a much dirtier thing Helen said during the break. All right, now everybody knows Ben Gleeb's on Rebel headquarters. You're gonna check that out. Everybody knows he's got the special Mad King. Everybody also knows Helen Hong's guy is the host of Old Korean Dad Jokes on YouTube. But on top of that, apparently you guys just did a episode together that just dropped?
I host a podcast called Go Fact Yourself for you trivia heads.
It's a trivia game show.
It's a trivia game show
podcast
with celebrities, and I've had Ben. We have to have you on.
Oh my God, we do.
Yeah, are you a trivia head?
No, but sometimes I do shockingly bad, but sometimes I do shockingly good.
Yeah.
So
you also get to choose whatever category you're an expert on.
You can pick a topic.
Oh, okay.
So in this case, you might be like obsessed with something that nobody else is as obsessed with.
Okay, Turkish oil wrestling.
Oh,
800.
Oh my God, we have to have you on. I don't even know what that is, and I need to know now.
Someone's Googling tonight, and it's not me.
All right, but let's get started today.
All right. Matt Gaetz is doing, this is a Matt Gaetz story. We have a cold open. I should have not started talking yet, so let's go to that.
Will you be okay then if there's ultimately a deal struck with moderate Democrats that give Democrats kind of co-control of the committees? You're fine with that?
No, absolutely not. That will not happen. There are two potential scenarios here. No, listen, I'm on the floor, Laura. These 212 Democrats are going to vote for Hakeem Jeffries every single time. He is a historic candidate for them. They are not going to cleave off under any circumstance. I assure you that if Democrats join up to elect a moderate Republican, I will resign from the House of Representatives. That is how certain I am. I can assure your viewers that won't happen.
Apparently, the Republican Party is referring to black people now just as historic. So there's that. Matt Gaetz doing everything he can to stop Kevin McCarthy from becoming Speaker of the House and making a fool of himself in the meantime. Gaetz isn't just willing to resign over this very embarrassing House Speaker fiasco. He is even willing to go against his daddy. Take a look at this clip.
Why is Trump for him? I mean, how many posts on Truth Social can we see from President Trump telling y'all, okay, this has been fun, but let's wrap it up here?
Well, I love President Trump. I love President Trump. I defended him a great deal in Congress, but HR wasn't always his strong suit. You know, President Trump got us folks like Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr and Jim Mattis and Mark Esper, people who didn't always advance America First policy. So while I think Trump has the vision, I do. I think President Trump is wrong to the extent that he supports Kevin McCarthy.
I love the obvious sense in Laura Ingram's face that she can't even conceptualize that Donald Trump could be wrong about something. She's like, so he's wrong? He's been posting on Truth Social that has truth in the name. Also perhaps going a little heavy on the lip fillers, that's my opinion. Even though Matt Gaetz thinks Trump is wrong about McCarthy, he still had enough confidence in him to get this, vote for him to be Speaker of the House yesterday. And let's see how many others in the House also voted for Trump as Speaker.
The Honorable Donald J. Trump
of the state of Florida has received 1.
I would love to play that in a loop in my dreams. The entire house laughing out loud at Donald Trump. But I probably can't. I can at least play it to soothe myself to sleep. Trump himself finds the idea of being speaker amusing. You technically don't have to be a member of the House to be the Speaker of the House. It's one of those rules that the Constitution left out. So here's Trump's post on Truth Social, which is 100% factual if you don't have any sense of reality. And there's a picture of Trump behind Biden, sticking his tongue out like a child. This is Trump's most true essence. And a look we've never seen from him at all. According to former Congressman Denver Riggleman, there's method behind Trump's meme madness. Meanwhile, well, let's take a look at this video and let Riggleman explain.
That is just Trump trying to stay in the public, spotlight right now. It's going on, and I was going to say this earlier. You're not hearing any other name that's wanting to run for president out there right now. It's only been Trump surrounding this. You haven't heard DeSantis. You haven't heard anybody else's name. I think Trump's trying to capitalize on this. And by the way, he'll take credit if McCarthy loses. He'll say, hey, McCarthy just wasn't strong enough. He was too weak. But if there's some negotiation, he's going to take credit that somehow he was behind the negotiation. But he wants to win the meme wars, and we looked at disinformation. He sort of wins the meme wars when you're going out to all the social media. And honestly, that's how his guys sort of react. And I think that's what they do, is they try to leverage every bit of this to make him look like a winner through memes.
They're trying to make him look like a winner through memes. That's where our society has devolved to. Former president running again to lead the meme war. It's quite incredible. It is quite incredible.
Yeah, wasn't that Star Wars episode 11? The meme wars?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the -1 prequel.
Yeah. So Trump with the tongue sticking out, don't get it wrong, he posted that.
Yeah.
Former president of the United States, he posted this picture.
Taunting him like a child.
He's unreal, man. He's unreal.
Yeah, while he's still trying to somewhat support McCarthy's bid.
Yeah, sorry.
No, please.
I was just gonna say, can you imagine Jimmy Carter doing the same thing?
I mean, maybe to get peanuts out of his teeth, that's about it.
I just can't believe that clip where that poor woman had to say, the Honorable Donald J. Trump gets one, but I think the laughing should have started at the word honorable. Like, that's when the laughing should have started. The what?
Yeah, because no one in Congress is honorable. Even you just hear the word honorable, like this is a joke in every context.
Yeah, and so, but on the substance of it, such as it is, so Matt Gaetz, I don't think he's wrong to say, yeah, I don't agree with Trump on this one. So what? Okay, and then, but like he's still worried about it. So he goes in, he's like, well, I mean, I meant I vote for Trump. Yeah. Oh, okay, so not so tough.
Yeah, he started out with like, I love the man. I swear to God, he's the best. I love President Trump. And then he kind of like shied down to be like, I don't think.
And that's the only metric that we have of his waning influence on the GOP. Trump's waning influence is just they still support him wholeheartedly, but they're now feeling free to speak slight words against 100% agreement with dear leader in everything he says.
In a hushed voice.
In a hushed voice.
And let's note for the record that, a viewer pointed this out yesterday, and now I can't unsee it. Apparently Laura Ingraham cannot close her mouth. And so as I was watching the whole time, I'm like, oh my God, the lips never meet. It's amazing. Like when she talks, when she's standing still, the lips never touch. That is amazing. Okay, anyways, random fact, back to the news.
It's puffy Botox and rapey McForehead together in one screen. I can't, I'm sorry, I can't. I just can't. Why are we listening to this? Like, how is this man still a legislator in the United States government? Literally his nickname is Rapey McForehead on Twitter, and everyone knows who you're talking about when you say that. Like, isn't he like a legit pedophile? Like, why are we still listening to him?
That's the accusations, at least.
Yes, well, the charges got dropped, of course, in the state of Florida, which I'm really surprised by that, given how progressive they are. No, but I add one thing from a member. Post-traumatic South disorder said, who did Matt Gaetz' forehead vote for? Okay, But they're allowed to have large foreheads and weird lips.
Yeah.
So back to
He's
the
a forward thinker. Anyway, behind the scenes, Trump is being forced to begrudgingly try to support McCarthy's bid for Speaker. So he's making calls on his behalf while, in perfect Trump style, still digging at him in these calls. Some of McCarthy's opponents have suggested to Trump that they would switch their vote if it was of crucial importance to the former president. If you really want me to, boss, I will. But Trump ignored those offers and instead told reluctant lawmakers they should continue negotiating to work out their differences, according to one person familiar with the conversations. And while Trump has publicly declared his support for McCarthy, sort of, kind of flip-flopping on it, but sort of has, the former president has privately acknowledged frustrations with him as well. Trump complained to some Republican lawmakers about McCarthy's push to censure him after the Capitol riot on Jan 6, 2021. Happy anniversary, by the way, everyone. And spoke of his support for him in dispassionate terms. And Trump speaks about everything passionately. So dispassionate from Trump, that's real bad. He talks about taco bowls. I love these taco bowls. They're incredible. McCarthy, whatever, up to you. Still, Trump has told them that he views McCarthy as the only House Republican capable of winning enough votes to become Speaker. The same reason advisors say he backed McCarthy in the first place. When some have asked whether they should trust McCarthy, Trump has responded by saying, well, they can vote him out if they want. Under the new powers McCarthy has agreed to.
Listen, he can't have the level of passion that he normally has because he's busy winning the meme wars. I mean, do you know how much time and effort it takes to Photoshop your whatever that is into the. It takes a while.
I'm surprised he can compete this well in the meme wars on account of the bone spurs. You would think that would keep him out.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Thank you.
But all of the things that Ben just explained about Trump's actions feed into what Riggleman was saying. I think Riggleman was right in this case. So number one, why is he backing McCarthy? This is not what Riggleman said, but is true. Because he always wants to back the winner. So he can say, oh, it was because of me he won. I backed him. And that's why he won. Okay. And so, but at the same time, he wants to be able to say if he doesn't win, I was milquetoast about it. I like the taco bowl more than I like McCarthy, and that's why he lost, right? And so, again, Riggleman was definitely right about how he's playing both sides, and you could tell it in the details.
I love how his memes are just dropping all of our collective IQs. Like literally, all three of us have been like.
For the record, I have not done the dumbness. I've not stuck my tongue out yet.
No, it's true. It's just 2 out of 3 of us that he's dumbed down.
Yeah. I just feel dumber talking about him.
But I will join the dumbness with this next part. The Daily Show posted a fake CNN screen which talked about McCarthy's proposed concessions. As you may know, he's given everything up to get the speakership in this now the 13th vote that just happened. He still isn't there, but is much closer. Another vote happening tonight. He believes he has the votes. McCarthy's proposed concessions, according to the Daily Show, he can only bang the gavel on his own crotch. He must build the border wall, and he has to be on the other side of it. He has to install Wild West saloon doors on the Capitol to make future insurrections easier. He has to subpoena Hunter Biden's penis. Once a year, Lauren Boebert can hunt him for sport. And finally, on the first Friday of the month, it will be Take Your Daughter to Matt Gaetz's office day. So he really had to reach deep for these concessions.
They had me at bang the gavel on his own crotch.
Yeah.
They had me like right out the gate. I was like,
I would support him for speaker if these conditions were met.
Yeah, and Trump probably would like those conditions, right? Like he's probably thinking, oh, that's a good one. Hold on.
I heard there's a gavel thing on the table. I have full-throated support, if so.
Yeah.
How can I meme the gavel banging on my own crotch? Anybody? Anybody have a meme?
You hit the gavel and then the tongue comes up. Okay, I'm winning the meme wars. All right, one thing of substance here. Matt Gaetz, I'm now conflicted about him, and so instantly that's shocking to begin with, because look, he's awful on everything else, and he does have a large forehead, and he was kissing Trump's ass there while being honest that he doesn't agree with him, etc. But as I've been telling you for a while, he does have good anti-corruption measures, and by the way, it's because he doesn't take any PAC money. and none of the rest of the Republicans agree with him. By the way, most of the Democrats don't agree with him. So I like those. And in one of his speeches, he did a bunch of speeches that were against McCarthy, and everybody got all riled up because he called him a squatter. Ooh. Okay, I didn't care about any of those. But in one of the speeches, he actually did go after him in a real substantive way. He called him the LeBron James of special interest fundraising in this town. And there's a quote, they believe that Mr. McCarthy has earned the position of Speaker of the House because he raised $500 million to get Republicans elected. That is true. That is why they want McCarthy elected, because he is the most corrupt Republican. And if we're being honest, the reason the Democrats put Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House is because she was the most corrupt Democrat and had raised $1 billion for the Democratic Party. So that's the reality of it. And progressives should have had the courage to call that out, but they never have. And it's kind of embarrassing that Matt Gaetz is the first one in Congress to say, yes, raising this special interest money. That guy, they talk in general terms. Bernie's constantly talking about, oh, it's corporate this and that, and it's bad, and income inequality. But he never says that one right there, right? Okay, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they take tons of corporate money and they do what the donors want. He never says that. None of the Justice Democrats say it, and it drives me crazy. And it's deeply embarrassing that Matt Gaetz was the first one to have the courage to say it about someone in his own party.
And he said it harshly. He even directly said he has sold pieces of his own soul to the lobbyists and special interest money. And one of the things the Freedom Caucus is fighting for also is term limits. And I think that's one of the things I'm fully in line with, and that obviously the establishment does not want.
Wow, I can't believe that he doesn't take PAC money. I'm actually really shocked by that. And I will stop calling you Rapey McForehead.
Look at this. We're fairest show in America. Fairest show in America.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, speaking of rapey, one of the leading conservatives molests a young male staffer. Oof. Wait till you see who it is.
The Honorable Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received one.
You know, I'm good at this stuff. That's what I do.
So I'm going to tell you about spin the wheel one more time, and I realize why every time I say spin the wheel, that ring, ring comes into my mind, because Trump said that about the windmills and how they cause cancer. You know, you got all the noise from the wind, wing, wing, causes cancer, obviously. Anyways, our wheel that you can spin does not cause cancer. It causes the opposite. It causes you to get money or goods. So you could win a $100 Blue Apron gift card if you sign up for an annual membership, which would more than pay for itself. You can get, and by the way, it's pretty good odds. It's not like, oh yeah, you could win 0.05. No, like it's really good odds. Or you could win Shop TYT merch or Too Strong Coffee merch. You could just use that QR code that's on the screen right there, or you can go to tyt.com/spin. To become an annual member and spin that wheel. Okay, so now we're the members.
Windmills.
There you go. See, that's where it's from. Nice job, boy. Gabby Marita says, if squad existed in Spanish politics, they would be considered centrist or even center-right. It's only in the insane prism of US political discourse that they are seen as somehow radical left-wing. That's just a fact. She's 100% right. But the reason most people don't know that fact is because of corporate media. Corporate media is not going to tell you, oh my God, those guys would be actually slightly center-right in a sane world. Oh, who set up this insane world? We did, by calling them radicals and telling you that incredibly conservative positions are moderate. Are a big old a-hole, I don't make up these names, I just read them, said, yes, stop using the catfight intro, it belittles cats of the world. Wrong. Okay, fair. He went on to also add, I'm only guessing that you're a male, but just based on your handle. Anyway, he says, love and Helen's jacket, I'm effing pumped. Okay, yes. We do all agree on that, so God bless on that. Thank you. And there you go. Speaking of cats, Boomer Dragon Cat writes in, yay, an in-person power panel with in-person awesome people. Why, thank you, we appreciate it. Jenks left tricep of fury writes in, I hate Noem, but she's right. I live in Florida, you need to hit DeSantis head on. He's being protected right now. He folds when confronted, he needs to be challenged. I'm looking forward to him folding more. D.Get Shrifty gifted 10 subs and Marshall Ghetto gifted 5 subs on Twitch. Back on TYT, during the social break, I was saying Marshall Ghetto and D.Get Swifty I got erased. Anyway, Swifty, American Heroes for gifting so many subscriptions on Twitch, we appreciate it. And Progressive Canuck, as usual, gifted a sub on YouTube, so that's awesome. You guys are all wonderful. And Shaylee just became a member. If you're a member, you helped us spread honest news through this show. So we love you for it. Hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. Everyone else, you can go to tyt.com/spin. These days, get an annual membership and get to win a prize up to including $100 in free food from Blue Apron, or you could do it the traditional way, tyt.com/join. All right, bet.
We've got more. A staffer for the Herschel Walker campaign has accused chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp, of groping his crotch and sexually harassing him in October of last year. The staffer said the incident occurred the night of October 19 when Schlapp, chair of the American Conservative Union and lead organizer for the influential Conservative Political Action Conference, groped and fondled his crotch in his car against his will after buying him drinks at 2 different bars, according to the Daily Beast. He described Schlapp, who had traveled to Georgia for a Walker campaign event, as inappropriately and repeatedly intruding into his personal space at the bars. He said he was also very aware of his power dynamic with Schlapp. Schlapp, the staffer recalled, said he had wanted to spend the evening discussing the staffer's professional future. It was a public space and I was thinking that he got the hint. I did not want to embarrass him, he said, but it escalated. The staffer, in his late 30s, recalled that while he drove Schlapp back to the hotel, Schlapp put his hand on his leg, then reached over and fondled his crotch at length while he was frozen in shock, calling it scarring and humiliating. When they arrived at the hotel, the staffer said Schlapp invited him to his room. The staffer said he declined and left, quote, as quickly as I could. When he got home that night, he received a call from Schlapp to confirm the staffer would still be able to chauffeur him to an event the next day. He agreed, but says after the call, he broke down. He then recorded a series of tearful video accounts detailing the evening. What is wrong with me, he said. This is okay to happen? He said in one of the videos, I don't know what I did. It's very sad that this is okay. In another video, the staffer described the incident saying Schlapp put his hands on him in a sustained, unsolicited, and unwanted manner. Matt Schlapp of the CPAC grabbed my junk, he said, and pummeled at it at length. Pummeled.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? This person is literally doing this to me. From the bar to the Hilton Garden Inn, He has his hands on me and I feel so effing dirty. I feel so effing dirty. He informed the campaign about the incident the next morning. They took him off of driving duty and instructed him to tell Schlapp in writing that he'd made him uncomfortable, which he did. Schlapp called him 3 times over the next 20 minutes. When the staffer did not answer or return the calls, Schlapp sent another text asking him to, quote, look in your heart and call back. Quote, if you could see it in your heart to call me at the end of the day, I would appreciate it. Schlapp texted at 12 p.m. If not, I wish you luck on the campaign and hope you keep up the good work. To be fair to the Walker campaign, the staffer was emphatic that he felt nothing but support from the Walker campaign throughout the ordeal, and they've corroborated his account of the incident. Also, perhaps worth noting, he did not go to police officer Herschel Walker to report it. Of course, in a statement to the Daily Beast, he said, Schlapp attorney Charles Spies called the allegations an attack and said Schlapp, quote, denies any improper behavior. This appears to be now the 12th Daily Beast piece with personal attacks on Matt Schlapp and his family. The attack is false and Mr. Schlapp denies any improper behavior. We are evaluating legal options for response, the statement said.
Yep. All right.
There you have it.
So we're gonna get into Schlapp's hypocrisy in a second, but first, he denies any improper behavior. He's like, why? What was wrong with what I did? What? I don't get it. Okay, I'm a Republican. Don't we secretly fondle men all the time?
We pummel crotches constantly.
Yeah.
Pummeling crotches is our brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, CPAC stands for conservative pummels
Pummeling.
another crotch.
Oh my God. It's over.
Now I get it.
It's over. That's exactly what it stands for from now on, okay? You want to go to conservatives pummel another crotch, it's up to you. Have at it, boss.
Registration is open.
Yeah.
Come and get slapped.
No wonder his middle name is Schlippity. Schlippity Schlapp. All right, anyways, I don't even know what that means. All right, so I do want to say one thing to the Republican staffer there. Hey, dude, it's not your fault. Well, you know, he keeps saying over and over, why is this okay? It's not okay. You know, why? What did he say? What is wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
I feel so dirty. You shouldn't feel dirty. It's him.
Yeah.
He touched you without consent. It doesn't matter genders, etc. None of that. For us, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is you did not come close to giving him consent, and he went and touched your genitals. That's crazy. There's nothing wrong with what you did. There's something wrong with what he did.
I'm so glad that you said that, and I'm so glad that more men, like male victims, are coming out with sexual harassment, because this is what women have been saying for decades. Like, it was, you know, this is why I didn't come forward, and this is why it took me so long to say anything, because I was wondering what I did. Like, you know, it's something about sexual victimhood that causes people to be like, what did I do? Did I lead him on? And I'm so glad that the men are coming out and saying it too, because there's something about our society that makes the victims be like, did I do something? Did I invite this somehow? And it's no. You are the victim of somebody who's disgusting, who you did not give consent to. Male, female, whatever, on the gender spectrum you're the victim. You did nothing wrong. It's on them.
Yeah, and it would have been just the same if it was a woman who did it to you. And guys, I think the reason why society does it is creates that reaction is because we label sex so dirty that's why the guy uses the word like it's, oh my God, why am I dirty, right? No, there's nothing dirty about sex unless it's non-consensual. Then it's dirty, then it's wrong. But that is, if we didn't consider sex dirty, like for example, in a weird way, we don't even consider violence dirty. No one who ever gets punched in the face goes, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Why was I so dirty? What do you mean? Did other dude punch me in the face? Why am I dirty, right? It's so that the sexual element is created by society's weird taboos, and you gotta get past that. But most importantly, in the case of victims, you gotta get past the idea that you invited it or did anything wrong. You didn't. You're driving the car, you told him no earlier, and he still apparently pummeled it while
I mean, nobody,
you're driving.
unless you were like, please pummel my crotch.
You didn't say that.
No.
It's clear you didn't say that. And by the way, now one more thing before we get to his hypocrisy. did he actually do it? Now, of course, we can't ever know, right? Because we weren't there, but you put the pieces together in the court of public opinion based on what people are reporting and have said. So Daily Beast has corroborated that those videos from that day exist, that the text from that day exists. They've corroborated with people that he told a story at the time too. So he's not making it up afterwards. He's still keeping his identity secret because he doesn't want to be punished for it in Republican circles, because Matt Schlapp is very powerful within the Republican Party and conservative movement. And then one other thing that to me makes it pretty clear is Schlapp's text messages back to him. If you could find it in your heart to text me, if I was gonna get driven somewhere and somebody said, hey, I can't because of what happened last night, and I hadn't done anything last night, I'd be like, wait, what? I'm like, what do you mean what happened last night? I wouldn't be like, can you find it in your heart to text me back? I'm like, that's such a weird thing to say if nothing happened last night. I'd just be, wouldn't you be puzzled if, like last night, no, you didn't do anything crazy, right? I hope, I assume, right? If somebody texted you randomly was like, I can't drive you today because of what you did last night, would you send them a text back saying, look into your heart to call me? You'd send a text back with, what the hell are you talking about?
100%. And hats off to the Walker campaign for doing what most Republican campaigns, administrations never do, taking it seriously, respecting the victim, and saying, please put it on the record, write an email to Schlapp himself, and we support you 100%. That's the way to handle these things.
Hats not off to the Walker campaign for not believing any of the women that said that Herschel Walker
strong point
paid for their abortions or tried to pay for that. So no hats off to Herschel Walker's campaign for that. But in this instance, one hat off, maybe one hat off.
I was about to retroactively endorse the Herschel Walker for Senate campaign, and now I take it back. So I'm glad I didn't. But of course, with any Republican story like this, it's rife with hypocrisy. So let's explain why this is particularly noteworthy when it comes to Matt Schlapp. CPAC and Matt Schlapp, who is now accused of groping a man, have a long history of being very unkind to the LGBT community. In 2015, the Log Cabin Republicans, an LGBT group, said they had been excluded from the Conservative Political Action Conference. Make no mistake, LCR, Log Cabin Republicans, is actively being prohibited from sponsoring CPAC, said the group's executive director, Gregory T. Angelo, in a statement from February 2015. He continued, the American Conservative Union has the right to invite or not invite whoever they want to the Conservative Political Action Conference, but they should be honest about the reasons why. The only conclusion that can be made is that the organizers of CPAC do not feel gay people can be conservative. Eventually, the Log Cabin Republicans were allowed to attend CPAC, but not as sponsors. Of course, the vast majority of CPAC speakers do not support gay rights and promote quote unquote traditional marriage, which he acknowledged in his own words. Take a look at this short video.
ACU as a group is going to stand up for traditional marriage. We're going to stand up for the sanctity of unborn life.
That's the man accused now of pummeling another man's crotch, but
without his consent.
Without his consent, but he makes sure he stands up for traditional marriage and marginalizes the community that he might, it very well seems, be a part of.
Now, again, to be fair, it's possible that he's saying, look, I'm for traditional marriage, and then while you're in a traditional marriage, you go and attack crotches on the side.
Strong point.
Right?
Strong point.
I didn't want to get married to the guy. I just wanted his crotch.
Strong point.
Look, we are the fairest show in America. So Matt Schlapp actually has a mixed record on this. So while others didn't want the Log Cabin Republicans in CPAC at all, he thought that they should attend, but they shouldn't be sponsors. And from time to time, he has defended gay Republicans, okay? And at other times, when pushed back against that idea, he has fallen back to traditional marriage. Of course, gay people shouldn't have the same rights as we do. Don't be ridiculous. So he's conflicted on it.
Like in an exact quote when he said in 2015, if they don't think that's something they should stand up against, I think that's going to be discordant for voters who think the issue is important of traditional marriage. Voters think it's cynical to take a position you don't have any intention of defending or sticking up for. So he's saying if you're going to be against traditional marriage, go all the way. Go hard.
Yeah. So look, maybe he's not as extreme as other right wingers in despising gay people, but he's still definitely on the wrong side. Meanwhile, he knows he has these feelings, these attractions, but hey, if you're gonna be a Republican, you have to hate gays. And so he's like, all right, okay, I'll pretend to hate myself because I'm in the party of monsters, ghouls, goblins, and we live on fear and hatred. So I guess I'll pretend to hate myself.
Secret crotch pummelers. It's
Right.
the party of the down low crotch pummeling.
And it just shows the hypocrisy ingrained in these people that then create positions that they can't defend, and they have to double down in a way that makes no sense. I mean, to even share a personal story without sharing the name, years ago, I had a sexual encounter with a very prominent Republican woman, and it was a very fun, weird time. But then I said to her, "This is surprising considering the way your policies go." And she says to me, "Oh, all of us are freaks." And I literally during the encounter said, "Then why don't you legislate that way?" It kind of ruined the mood, but I had to make the point.
Wow, that was a hell of an interesting story out of the blue.
Yep.
Okay, definitely getting that name off air. Okay.
You'll be shocked to hear the name. Dude.
Okay, I will. Wow, way to get out there, Laura Bush.
I knew it. That's who I was thinking.
Let's just say mission accomplished, right? Can we drop the banner?
But remember, at the end of the day, Republicans are massive hypocrites. If a Republican is talking, a Republican is lying. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. We'll pretend not to be amazed by what Ben just told us. Okay, all right, here we go. Benjamin GL on Super Chat. The squad should offer to vote for McCarthy in exchange for a vote on Citizens United. If he says no, it's a win. If he says yes, it's a major win, as Democrats and Republicans will expose themselves. The media will call squad bipartisan, and Matt Gaetz will get to call McCarthy even more corrupt, wrecking their party. Now look, Benjamin, I like the way you're thinking, and throughout the entire episode, I was thinking, if I was in Congress, how could I try to, as a progressive, get something out of this? Somehow get our legislation passed because of this impasse, right? So I love that you're thinking about it that way. And by the way, thank you for your generosity too. But in this case, there's a couple of issues. Number one, McCarthy wouldn't have ever offered anything to the squad in return. He wouldn't have done it. So, I mean, and certainly wouldn't have done it on Citizens United. He loves Citizens United. He loves that. That is the very last thing that he would offer up for a vote, right? And besides which, in that case, it's a Supreme Court decision. So you'd have to offer up another anti-corruption measure, not necessarily anti-Citizens United, but they could have offered up the HR 1, which was the anti-corruption bill that the Democrats pretended to want in the beginning of the last term, but the progressives actually do want, right? And so there was different things that they could have tried to negotiate, but I'll tell you what would have happened is no, the press would not have called them bipartisan. No way. When you're actually bipartisan, you reach a right wing and a left wing, reach out to fight against corruption, the press despises it. No, they only like bipartisan stuff when it is good for corporations and the wealthy. that's when they're like, bravo, bipartisan semiconductor bill. The semiconductor corporations are gonna get even richer, yes, right? So in this case, they would have been like, look at that, the radicals working together. So, but I like the out of the box thinking, keep it going, Benjamin, okay? All right, let's stay on Super Chat. Mystical Energy Vibes, right? So no one is asking or answering the very important question, what happens when that one person decides to out him pre-new rule, who will be in charge? So I wanted to answer that. This is about Kevin McCarthy because now any one person in the House can challenge the speaker. But it doesn't mean that he's out as speaker when they challenge him. It means they have to vote again, okay? And so the reason why Matt Gaetz and others aren't gonna do that right away is because they just went through 14 votes. So if they do it again, they're like, oh, come on, how many times are we gonna vote on this thing, right? So it's a little bit more complicated than that. And now I'm out of time, and tyt.com/join. All right, back on TYT. AJ Duenas is an American hero for gifting 5 subscriptions on Twitch, and Christian Beck is an American hero for joining on YouTube. You can just hit the join button below the video there. Everybody, you can do it now on tyt.com/spin. Get an annual membership, and you might get your money back through a Blue Apron $100 gift card, among other prizes. So thank you guys. Ben, take it away.
Cardi B has got something to say. It is not WAP related. Check this out.
When I go to the supermarket, like I went to the supermarket, I'm seeing that everything tripled up. That like lettuce was like $2 a couple of months ago, and now it's like $7. Of course, I'm gonna say something. Because if I think that is crazy, I could only imagine what middle class people or people in the hood is thinking. So yes, I'm going to say something. And I have a big platform, so I do want anybody that's responsible of these prices to put that down.
That's Cardi B. Just as tired of the new hiked up grocery prices as we are. And she made it clear not just in that pretty awesome rant, but in a thread of now viral tweets. Here's one. Cardi tweets, nah, grocery shopping prices are ridiculous right now. You might as well eat outside. I'm not sure I follow the logic on it, but I do like the anger with it. In another tweet, she complained about the price of lettuce being $6 where she lives. While many on Twitter ridiculed the rich rapper for lamenting grocery prices, others argued in favor of her showing empathy. This is a problem affecting a lot of Americans. What do y'all think? I'm a supporter.
I'm here for Cardi B. She has always been like a person of the people. I can't believe she actually goes to the grocery store by herself. If I was like at Sprouts and I saw Cardi B, I'd be like, oh my God, you're Cardi B, what are you doing here?
For the record, I don't think she often does. She said she has someone that does most of the shopping. She gets a weekly price report, cost report, and then occasionally she maybe like once a year pops into the store like a president does, just to seem relatable.
I'm so glad that somebody is talking about it. It's crazy, like, you know, and I absolutely 100% agree with her. Like, I feel like we're amongst the lucky ones that can afford these higher prices, but there's, you know, I live in a low income neighborhood. I live in South Central LA, and like, I don't know how some of these people are affording lettuce and really basic goods, bread, peanut butter, cheese, like everything has skyrocketed. And hey, our wages have not skyrocketed. Nobody's wages are going up commensurate to what it costs to buy anything, like basic goods. Like we used to make fun of how you would go to Whole Foods, we'd call it whole paycheck, right? And you'd buy 6 things and it'd be like $100. That's everywhere now. That's every single grocery store. You buy 6 things and it's $100. Like how are people surviving? I don't understand.
They need to open a store called Part Foods. You just get a little sliver of the food.
One slice of cheese.
That's what we're gonna be down to soon. So, all right, look, I'm gonna back up what you're saying with numbers in terms of inflation. And by the way, they blame it on you guys because your wages are too high. Nonsense, total utter nonsense. I'm going to show it to you in the numbers in a minute. But first, I agree with you guys. I don't like. They're like, oh, it's so hypocritical of Cardi B to be rich, but then to care about poor people. Why is that hypocritical? That's not hypocritical at all. This is like a weirdo thing that people say either out of envy or because they're right wingers and they're like, don't help anybody. Don't care about the poor. Don't care about the middle class. No, it's wonderful if she got rich and famous and she still cares about the poor and the middle class. That's not a bad thing, it's a great thing. And I don't think you understand the word hypocrisy. No, right? It's 1,000 times worse when someone gets rich, and then it's like, oh, screw the poor. Who cares about the poor? I make fun of them. I'm so courageous. Okay, yeah, that's my views on Chappelle, but also every Republican on the planet. And it's not like she's pulling a Dr. Oz and she's like, oh, due to cloud, the price of crudité is through the roof.
Yeah, and they're like, bro, there's cheaper lettuce and carrots right here.
Yeah, so no, she's still complaining about the price of the veggie tray, not the crudité. So I can't even see what she did wrong. I don't know why everybody. I think that there's this, seriously, this idea that if you're wealthy, in order to do good, you have to give up all of your money at once. No, you could keep some of your money and live nice and still help people. So thank God for Cardi B.
Agreed, and here are some of the numbers that Cenk said we were gonna bring to you right now. While overall inflation has risen just 7.1%, which is not a just, that's a huge number already. Groceries hit a staggering 12% increase as of November 2022. Eggs, which have suffered shortages due to avian flu, have seen a nearly 50% increase in price. Those who receive Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP allotments have been hit particularly hard. Even with increases in allotments, SNAP recipients often have trouble affording groceries as rising assistance does not match the rates at which grocery prices are going up. In short, the struggle is real. So why is this happening? We have to ask. Well, surprise, surprise. The underlying economic problem is profit price inflation. It's caused by corporations raising their prices above their increasing costs. Corporations are using those increasing costs of materials, components, and labor as excuses to increase their prices even higher, resulting in bigger profits. This is why corporate profits are close to levels not seen in over half a century, as Robert Reich spoke about in The Guardian. Okay. But Ben, tell me more about groceries. Sure, no problem. Why are the groceries prices through the roof? Because just 4 companies control 85% of meat and poultry processing. Just 1 corporation sets the price for most of the nation's seed corn, and 2 giant firms dominate consumer staples. All are raising prices and increasing profits just because they can. What's even more shameful is CEOs are openly admitting this, openly admitting it. I don't even know if it's more shameful, at least it's a little bit of honesty, but so transparently seeing their greed in action, admitting they are raising prices to increase profits amid inflation. Quote, we're feeling good about how our consumers are staying loyal to our brands in spite of some of our pricing decisions, says Ramon Laguarta, the CEO of PepsiCo. Or the CFO of Procter & Gamble saying, while it's too soon to declare success, given the strength of our portfolio, broad-based share gains and early in-market results, we feel relatively well-positioned about our position to execute pricing.
We've now read about half a dozen of those quotes to you guys in different shows, because if you go to their earnings calls, that's where the CEOs brag about how well they did to the market. And so they tell the market, oh, we're increasing prices like crazy and these suckers are still paying it. And so our profit margins are through the roof. Now, I'm gonna show you that that is the case in the numbers. See, in a normal market, when you have, as prices increase, it's because firms have 3 different components to a price. Your labor costs, your non-labor costs, and your profit margin, right? Now, normally every year you give a little bit of a raise to labor, so labor winds up becoming a bigger part of the increase in your prices. So from 1979 to 2019, 60% of the increase in prices was due to labor. Now that's a long stretch of time, but it makes sense. It doesn't mean your wages went up a lot, they didn't, but of the prices that went up, and if inflation was relatively under control, 60% of it was due to labor, and that is normal, okay? And only 11% were extra profits that they were piling on. But since 2019, after COVID hit, they realized, oh my God, there's no one checking at all. We're all monopolized now. Over all of these years, we've gained control of these markets. We get set almost any price we want, and the government isn't regulating us anymore. They don't let us do anything. They let us strand millions of people in airports, screw over the entire Christmas breaks, etc., and they won't fine us $1. Even the Democrats won't do it. They're a goddamn joke. They're almost bragging about it in these calls. So what happened in these last 3 years? Only 8% of the price increases have been due to labor. 54% were because of extra profits. So when you see on cable news, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC, telling you, and they both have, and we showed those clips to you as well. Oh, inflation's because of the workers. The wages are going up too much. And by the way, the Federal Reserve, representing the rich and the powerful, we got to raise interest rates so that we lower employment and lower wages, and that's going to give us stability. It doesn't have anything to do with wages. It's all the massive profit that they're taking home.
And a big part of the 8% isn't even increased wages. It's because unemployment has been so low, they have to just pay more people, not paying them better rates.
Yeah, so that's another part of it. So, and you never hear this in corporate media, why? Because they're also giant corporations, right? So they're not gonna tell you, we're also taking home the profit, and we're all pretending that it's your fault, when it's actually our decisions. So that's why Cardi B, greater than all of corporate media in telling you the truth about prices.
Amen. And it's one thing to gouge people on a Tesla, but to gouge people on eggs and bread and peanut butter, like these corporations are truly evil at this point. Like like the whole thing that happened with the infant formula, like what is happening? These are basic necessities. Eggs, you're gonna fleece the American public on eggs? Go suck an egg.
I hope we call this story Cardi B mad about price gouging.
Oh.
That's my wish.
It took me a second, but I got it.
Season.
Okay, so guys, we're out of time here, so we got a couple of minutes left, but not enough for a whole story. So I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen in the bonus episode, okay? We've got to do these stories. Number one, a douchey right winger says women don't understand sports and football in particular. Helen's gonna have strong words for that. Two idiot, presumably right-wing morons go to burn down an immigration center, burn themselves down. It is a great video. You're gonna love that video. And then we have one more crazy story, and that is, oh yeah, a controversy about whether you should call people young lady, okay? So all that's in the bonus episode, tyt.com/join. If you're on YouTube, you hit the join button below and you become instant American heroes and you get extra content. Think about it.
Okay. If we have a second, can I plug something real quick?
Go.
So please check out my special, The Mad King, on YouTube. But also, if you're in the LA area on the 12th of January, I'm doing a very special show, Ben Glebe and Friends of the Lyric Hyperion, with James Adomian and TYT's Francesca Fiorentini. Get tickets at benglebe.com. Follow me at Ben Glebe on Instagram or Twitter, and all the links are right there. I hope you do come out.
Plugs.
Oh, my special Well Hong is streaming now on a bunch of platforms. Well Hong, get into it.
Well Hong and your podcast, Go Fact Yourself.
Go Fact Yourself.
I see a theme.
Yes. As you're saying, well hung, Matt Schlapp's like, well hung.
Pummel.
Hashtag pummel.
When he signed up for the pummel horse in high school gym, it was not what he expected.
By the way, Be Verious gifted 5 Young Turks memberships just now, also American hero. And by the way, John and I were talking about this during one of the breaks. I never realized that Matt Gaetz looked like Butthead from Beavis and Butthead until one of you guys pointed it out today. One of the members did, and then I was like, "Oh my God, you're so right! I can't unsee it."
Can't unsee it.
All right, we'll see you in the bonus episode right now.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you.